Hello and welcome to this quick session on the Core Skills for Work Development Framework. This session I want to show you how to apply the Core Skills for Work Developmental Framework to a training benchmark. Now to do that I need to share my screen, so just bear with me for a moment. And what you should be seeing now is two screens, one that shows the document for the Core Skills for Work Developmental Framework, and one that shows a workplace benchmark, so a clerk job description template. So it's just a position description that I've located on the net. I've changed it a little bit to reflect current workplace standards. And what we're going to do is have a look at how we might apply the Core Skills for Work Developmental Framework to the job description and see if we can identify those core skills that are embedded in the job description. So we're just going to scroll down into the contents page. Now this document is on your Moodle and I really encourage you to download it and to make your way through it. You will need to know how to use the document and how to apply it in training, and not only for an assessment in the subject that you're currently doing, but also in other subjects in your Diploma of Adult Education. You will need to know how to apply the framework to the training products you develop, to the learning programs you develop, and also to the assessments that you develop and conduct. So it's a really important document, and it's written in a nice plain English style. It's easy to understand and easier to get your head around. Now you can see I've used this picture here in your learner notes, and there will be some overlap in some ways of the information that is in this document and some of the summary information in your learner document. So I'm not going to go through all of the information, otherwise we'll be here all afternoon and I don't want to do that to you. I just want to focus on having a look at the job description and some of the stages of performance. Now I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger. So these are the generic descriptions of the stages of performance. What I'm going to get you to do now is just pause the recording and go in and have a read of the job clerk description and also have a look at the generic descriptions of stages of performance. And I'd like you to think about if you were to measure this job description against the generic descriptions, what you might measure it at. Would you measure it at a novice performer? Would you measure it at an advanced beginner, a capable performer, a proficient performer, or an expert performer? So pause the recording now and take some time to read both of these documents that are showing on your screen. So welcome back. Hopefully you've had time to have a read through both documents and you've come up with an idea in your head of how you might measure the performance in terms of job skills. Now, I am going to actually, in my initial stages, I'm going to actually cross out the first stage, the novice performer, and I'm going to get rid of level 4 and level 5, and I'm going to focus on level 2 and level 3. Now, why am I going to do that? Firstly, when I've looked at the job description, I can see that we need somebody who is going to run front of house and complete a range of day-to-day duties. So I know that they need to have some skills and they need to have some communication skills. And they're responsible for answering the telephone, taking messages, greeting clients, capturing data, filing, responding to queries from the public, manning and maintaining the database. As I read down in the job description, I can see that this person has to have excellent organisation and time management skills and previous experience. Previous experience kind of rules out that novice performer. Now, then I'm going to pop down into the responsibilities and I'm going to have a look at what the responsibilities of this role are. And I can see that this person might need to respond to inquiries or complaints. So they need to have a little bit of understanding and a little bit of initiative, and also be able to follow communication protocols in the workplace and set policies and procedures. So now, depending on what their role is and to what extent they're expected to respond to any queries or complaints, this is where I'm getting I'm not quite sure if we're looking at an advanced beginner or a capable performer. Because if I look at this last bit of level 2, still reliant on explicit rules and on assistance to identify priorities, but can apply these more autonomously in familiar routine situations. And then adopts a systematic analytical approach to tasks, especially unfamiliar situations. Now, unless you're working on a complaints hotline, being able to respond to a complaint may be an unfamiliar situation. So this is my reason for my hesitancy. So what can I do to really nut out whether or not this job description sits within that level 2 or that level 3? So I'm going to drill down into the stages of performance. So as we scroll down, we can see that there's an overview of the structure of the CSfW. And I'm just going to flip my page for you over to here. Now we do have a number of skill clusters, and we have skill areas and we have focus areas. Now, to drill down more into the skill cluster, we can go and have a look at the performance features. We're not going to do that just yet. We're just going to have a look at this overview. So when we look at the navigate the world of work, we have manage career and work life and work with roles, rights and protocols. So skill area 1A, look, the focus areas are identifying work options, gaining work and developing relevant skills and knowledge. 1B is work with roles and responsibilities, operate within legal rights and responsibilities, and recognise and respond to protocols. So for me, I'd be looking at this job description and I would be thinking that the person that sits in this job is actually aligned more to this 1B. But I don't know what level it is at the moment. So I'd need to go in and have a look at the performance features. 1A, yes, they need to manage career and work life, but they may have already gained work. So we might need to be looking at something in terms of additional education in work in the workplace. So we might be looking over here. They might hold a certificate to in business, so we might be hoping that they will be self-directed, or we will be developing those self-directed skills to encourage lifelong learning and work out a way that within the workplace we can undertake a certificate 3 in business or a certificate 3 in business admin. There's lots of ways we might do that, but we'll talk about that a bit later on. So here we have our skill area for interact with others, where we have communicate for work, connect and work with others, and recognise and utilise diverse perspectives. We get down to get the work done. We're into planning and organising, making decisions, identifying and solving problems, creating and innovating, and working in the digital world. So as we come over here, we can drill down a little bit more. Now, what I'd like you to do is pause the recording now, and I'd like you to go in and have a look at the different skills areas, and I can make that a tad bit smaller for you, although that might make it difficult for you to read. I apologise. And I would like you to go through the job description and highlight some of these things that might align to some of the skills areas. So, for example, if we're looking at to interact with others, communicate for work. So, this skill area is about using communication skills to achieve work outcomes. It involves the capacity to recognize communication protocols and etiquette, use communication systems and processes, understand messages, and get messages across to others. So let's have a look here. We have got in communicate for work, I'll just use my yellow highlighter, answering the telephone, taking messages, greeting clients, front of house. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to go through this job description and highlight those action words or action phrases that relate to communicating for work. So responding to queries from the public. So I just responding to queries. Mailing, not necessarily. Interacting with people. And we've got welcoming clients and offering them refreshments. Communicating with clients and employees and responding to any complaints. Not so much sorting and forwarding incoming mail. Booking and preparing meeting rooms and ensure refreshments are available. Yes, that involves communicating. Coordinate activities and disseminate information. Again, communication skills. Now, when we look down into the clerk requirements, we have to have a personable demeanour. So again, communication skills. So we can see that communication is really important to this job role. What about connecting with work and others? So it's about building the work-related relationships needed to achieve an outcome within a work group or to achieve goals through team-based collaborations. It involves the capacity to understand others and build rapport, which in turn involves understanding one's own values, goals, expectations, and emotions, and making choices about regulating one's own behaviour and taking the needs of others and often implicit social rules to the context into account. So here I'm going to use green. I'm just going to go over some of the information that I've already highlighted because it's relevant to 2B, to interacting with others. So I know that 2A and 2B, I know they're connected because it's about interacting with others, but it's in relation to communication. So I would go through here and I would make sure that I've got a delineation. I know which skill is which. So I know that I've used green for 2B. So I know that we've got a crossover here. Now recognise and utilise diverse perspectives. So this skill area is about the capacity to recognise and respond to differing values, beliefs and behaviours, and to draw on diverse perspectives for work purposes and to manage conflict when it arises. So again, we have complaints where we might be having some conflict. So, and again, we've got this responding to queries. Then we would move over into getting the work done, making decisions, identifying and solving problems, creating and innovate and working in a digital world. And what we would do is we would go through the job description and we would highlight those action words or those task areas that address each of those different segments or different skills. Something to remember though is that not all of the skills are necessarily embedded in your benchmark. You might have people that work at a lower level and they don't have to identify and solve problems, or they might not need to create and innovate, or they might not need to work in a digital world. So, sorry, I'll just scroll back up. I was scrolling in the wrong thing. So I'll just flick my view around for you again. Now you should be reading these things like influencing factors, performance features, and so on, because that gives you an overview of how to apply the different skills areas. Now we're moving into the performance features table. So this gives you a definition of the different key terms and concepts, which helps you to apply them when you're using them. So make sure you read those. Now I'm just going to rotate my screen for you again. And here we have a that performance features table. Now we have identify work options. Now what we can do is have a look at identify work options, and we can align what we think to this table. Now how can we do that? What we can do is we might type up a new table or make a list. Whoops, not very good with my typing today. Thank goodness for spell check. Now, when we think about this job position and we think about identifying work options, this person should have relevant experience and previous experience. So I'm just going to make that pink. In addition to that, they should have a business certificate level 2. So again, I'm not quite sure if we're at level 1. I'm thinking more level 2, level 3. So if we have a look at the criteria there, in level 2, we've got target some specific occupations and work options and take some steps to identify required qualifications, skills and experience. Well, at this point, this person has done that because they've already completed a certificate 2 in business. So that indicates to me that we should be moving into level 3, draws on past experience to identify preferences, skills and aptitudes and preferred occupation and work roles. So I would say that's a big yes, because we've got previous experience, relevant experience. Attempts to take control of factors influencing personal, career and work-life decisions. Uses a systematic process for developing career, identifying and researching employment options and associated skill and qualification requirements. Again, I would say that's a big yes. Develops career plans, identifies pathways and takes steps to address immediate barriers and skills gaps that are within their own control. That's something that we would know if we had the job description and we also had something like a performance review that we could look at comparatively, and recognises the value of advice and seeks assistance for ongoing career planning and development. So for me, I would maybe rate this at a 3 at this stage. Now to gain work, because we already looked at 2 and 3 up here, I'm going to jump straight into 2 and 3 here, simply because I've looked at the framework before. So you would need to make sure you were familiar with what was in the framework, in each part of the framework, before you were just able to just jump straight into a certain level. So I would expect somebody who is in this job to be a level 3 because here it says independently uses a small range of strategies for seeking work or career advancement. This person's got their job, so they've used a range of strategies and resources when identifying and applying for a new role, and they're able to describe their skills, knowledge, and experience in related to the stated job requirements and take steps to find out more about potential position. So I'm going to, so that's somebody who rings up and inquires about a job role. So I'm going to say that's a 3 as well. Then I'm going to jump down to developing relevant skills and knowledge. So take steps to develop skills, obtain qualifications and relevant experience, and with encouragement may seek feedback on work performance from a trusted source. Now, it doesn't really go into any of those details in here, so I'm actually going to skip that. So work within roles, rights, and protocols. So again, I'm going straight to this 2 and 3. Understands main tasks, responsibilities, and boundaries of own role. Let's have a look. There's some pretty clear responsibilities there, some pretty clear requirements. May take on responsibility for decisions regarding when and how to complete tasks and coordinate with or delegate to others. Excellent organisational and time management skills. So that to me indicates that this person takes responsibility for decisions. Let's have a look at the level 3 one. Takes responsibility for decisions about when and how to complete tasks and coordinate with others. That to me feels like a better fit. Feels personal ownership of outcomes. Well, I would imagine that this being their responsibilities, they would feel personal ownership of outcomes. Let's have a look at the first one. Understands the nature and purpose of own role and associated responsibilities and how it contributes to the work of others in the immediate work context. I would imagine so. That would be a yes. So work roles, work with roles and responsibilities. I'm going to measure that at a 3. Oops, sorry. So operate within legal rights and responsibilities. Within every workplace, we have to operate within legal rights and responsibilities. What this doesn't say in this job description is what legal and regulatory requirements are required and to what extent does this person apply them. Now, we know that we're looking at an experienced worker. We know that we're looking at somebody who can organise and manage their time, who can respond to queries, who looks after complaints. So we're going to assume that they are either an advanced beginner or a capable performer. So at this point, without any further information, I'm actually, because it's hard for me to make a judgment without getting more information from the employer, I am going to put in an indicative level 2 to 3. So what I would do if I wanted to measure the core skills against the framework and what kind of level somebody should be operating at is I'd make my way down through this document and I'd be looking at the different keywords and the different tasks, and I'd be measuring them against these different indicators here. So that is how you can measure against a workplace benchmark the core skills for workplace development. Now, of course, if you had somebody who was in this role who wasn't able to complete all the tasks, you'd have a look at the different core skills areas that they need development in, and you would have a look at what, let's say they need to be operating at a level 3, but they're only operating at a level 2. So you can identify the gaps and you can develop a training strategy to address those gaps. But the first thing is to measure the training benchmark or to measure the workplace benchmark, and then you would measure the performance of the worker, identify the gaps, and then come up with a training strategy. Anyway, I hope you found this informative and you're able to apply it in your workplace or in your study to identify those core skills. Thanks and have a good evening.